Thank you, Dr. Michael Klaper, for being on Veggie Channel. Today we are in London for the VegMed 2019, and we would like to ask you, how did you become vegan? How this can happen in the life of a physician?
Well, it certainly happened in this life of this physician. Back in 1981, two forces really converged that made it untenable to not adopt a vegan diet. One, I was working as a medical resident in anesthesiology. I was going to be an anesthesiologist. And I was on the cardiovascular service at a hospital in Vancouver. And that's the service that deals with people's hearts and blood vessels. And day after day, I'm putting people to sleep and watching surgeons open up their chest and from their arteries in their heart pull this yellow, greasy guck out of their arteries called atherosclerosis. And one day I'm watching a surgeon pull a particularly yellow, slithery piece out of an artery, and I think to myself, boy, that stuff looks like chicken fat. And the little voice from my shoulder said, there's a good reason why it looks like chicken fat. It is chicken fat and cow fat and pig fat and fat of these animals this man's been eating. And there were already studies in the literature making it very clear that where that fat was coming from and that a plant-based diet could reverse the buildup of fat in the arteries. And my father was already showing signs of clogged arteries. He eventually died of clogged arteries. I knew I was going to be laying on that operating table with that striker saw going up my chest, and I didn't want that. So I was getting a strong message from the operating room, from the medical profession per se. But also, I was on the road to a more spiritual approach to life. I had been reading the books of Gandhi and the Indian saints about living a life of nonviolence. And one evening in Vancouver, I'm pontificating to a friend about living a life of nonviolence while I'm finishing a porterhouse steak for dinner. And he says, that's all very well and good, Michael, but if you really want to get the violence out of your life, you might want to start with that piece of meat on your plate, because in satisfying your desire for the taste of flesh in your mouth, you are paying for the death of the animal and for the next one in line at the slaughterhouse. And as soon as he said that, all the old rationales came into my head. Well, that's what they raised them for, and the animal's dead already. And
how much time did it take, this process?
Before I could get the words out of my mouth, the little voice said again, he's right. He's right. When I went up to pay for the meal, I felt like I was complicit in a crime. And between the two, from what I was hearing in the operating room and what I knew in my heart, the time for eating animals had passed.
And at that time, did you need to make sure that what you were thinking about, the origin of this cholesterol, were you looking for physical evidence somewhere? And where did you go at the beginning?
Right. There were already studies in the medical journal. Dr. Frey Ellis had published a study of his angina patient that had responded so well to a plant-based diet. The fat cholesterol hypothesis was already in the medical literature, and I was on the cardiovascular anesthesia service. It was commonly discussed that these people's diets was what was clogging up their arteries.
So you knew already?
I was aware of the science behind it.
It was difficult to accept.
But as they say, denial is not just the name of a river in Egypt. I didn't want to, like everybody else, I can get away with it, and so even though I knew better.
Now that you are from a different perspective, what would you say to the doctors, which is actually the speech that you are going to make today? What every doctor needs to know about nutrition?
Every doctor needs to know how powerful their patient's diet is to either cause disease or reverse the disease, and to practice medicine as if what our patients are eating has no effect on these diseases, as medicine's practiced now, is bankrupt on every level, scientifically, morally. To withhold this information from our patients is unethical at this point. And so doctors need to know the power of nutrition and the joy in seeing their patients get healthy when they adopt a plant-based diet. Every doctor needs to know that. I'm the happiest doctor I know because my patients get healthy, and I want every physician to know that as well.
When you tell the doctor you should have a look at the scientific literature, and they say, yes, but those studies are not real studies. This is what we hear very often. What could we answer to this?
Indeed. they need to understand that nutrition does not lend itself to the classic double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized study that they do to test a drug. That you can put a placebo drug and the patient doesn't know if they're getting the active drug or the placebo. Nutrition doesn't lend itself to that. People know what they're eating. And these studies would have to be done for 20 and 30 years with people maintaining the same diet. They don't do that either. And no one's going to pay for such a long-term study. It's unreal to ask nutrition to come up with that kind of evidence when the truth is the observational studies show so many people reversing their disease. At what point, how many people with pneumonia did you have to cure with penicillin before people accept, yes, penicillin will cure pneumonia? Did they need 200, 500, 10,000, 20,000? At what point do you say we recognize that?
Okay.
And it's similar with nutrition at this point. No one has ever showed that aspirin cures headaches, but we accept it. We know that, and it's time for people to make that understanding about nutrition as well.
Thank you very much for being on Veggie Channel. See you again, maybe in Italy next time.
I would hope so. Anytime. It's important to get this word out. Thank you.
Thank you.